None of that was recorded.
No.
I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid. Let me get back to
Man, I was gonna ask for that video.
All right, Will, you are on, so let's dive into the discussion today.
All right. So I'm probably going to butcher a lot of the names of this, but main character in the story is Second Lieutenant Saichi Miyazaki, I think is his name. And Saichi has come to Pastor Carter Jackson of the Kalakaua Baptist Church in Hawaii. And we're given the information that Carter Jackson has been missionary and pastor for over 30 years in China and Hawaii. And he had met Saichi about 3 years ago. And he was among the men that he had counseled and just been a mentor to. And the reason that Saichi was coming to Pastor Carter was because he felt that he was being called to a full-time Christian vocation, or to be serving in a full-time ministry, and he felt an interest there. And he'd already been serving as a Sunday school teacher and counselor for junior age boys, and he was also a leader in the young adults ministry for the past 2 years. But the main reason he came to Pastor Carter was because he had to explain some of the circumstances that were going on in his life with his family. And so he explained that he's the firstborn of 7 children to Kazuo and Matsui Miyazaki, who are his parents. And he was raised in Malacca and went to high school in Honolulu, which is on the island of Oahu. And his family, he was raised in a Buddhist home, and he attended the Buddhist temple on Sundays. His mother worked in the pineapple fields on Oahu to help him pay for his college education after high school, and he attended a private school. After he finished private school, he decided to go study at the University of Hawaii and get a degree in business administration, and he was able to live there with his aunts in Honolulu. While he was studying there, back at home, his family decided to move to a more rural community, and they were able to lease 5 acres of land for truck farming. But due to heavy rain for 2 years in a row, their crops they ruined their crops. The heavy rain did, and this led their family to be on the they were close to bankruptcy. So this led Saichi to decide to drop out of school and to start he got a full-time job so he could just go support his family, since they were not able to provide for themselves with their crops being ruined, and it'd take a while for them to be fixed. And so his father wanted him to stay in school, though, and finish up his business degree, because so he could be supporting his family. And also his father wanted him to eventually open up a family-owned store with his business degree that they could all run together. And Saichi's younger brothers, the case study tells us, were mentally challenged, and they obviously wouldn't be able to support their family when they came of age. And so after he explained these things to Pastor Carter, he also explained that 2 weeks ago, before he came in to Pastor Carter, that his mother's father passed away, so his grandpa had passed away. And since they're in a Buddhist family, they had a Buddhist funeral service for him. And during this service, their family was asked to light incense sticks for in honor of his grandpa, but Saichi refused to do so, since he was a Christian and wanted to show his loyalty to Christ. And obviously his family was not, didn't take well to this, and he was put to shame probably, and Saichi was obviously hurt by this. And so Saichi then asked the question of Pastor Carter what he's to do in this situation, and with his family and with being called to ministry. So the main characters of the story are Saichi, Pastor Carter Jackson, and side characters of the story are Kazuo Matsui, who is Saichi's parents, and then there's also Fumio and Hitachi Miyazaki, who are his 2 mentally challenged brothers. So the issues presented in the story are that Saichi's father expects him to support them and stay in pursuit of a business degree, but Saichi has dropped out and been in a full-time job and is now being called to full-time Christian service. And then another issue is Saichi's refusal to light the incense candles at the funeral. And I said this already, but the last issue is Saichi's decision to commit to full-time ministry work. So the alternatives to this story could be, one could be that Saichi does commit to a full-time Christian vocation just right away. After his conversation with Pastor Carter, they start looking into that, whether it's him becoming a missionary or pastor, furthering his knowledge as a Sunday school teacher or something of the sort. And I don't think that Saichi's family would be in support of this because of their beliefs in the Buddhism religion, and especially with what he did at the funeral service, that isn't a good look for him or Christianity to them, I believe. And he wouldn't be able to support his family financially either in a Christian vocation, probably. I mean, he could probably do I was talking to Dr. Mark about it yesterday, and he could probably do the best he can to support them with his funds in a Christian vocation, but it probably wouldn't be the best situation as they don't make too much money. Another alternative would be for Saichi to stay in pursuit of his business degree and support his family. And this would obviously show honor to his family, and they might even let go of the situation in the funeral service. But this is also an issue because is he then disobeying his call to go into full-time Christian service? One alternative that I think that he should pursue is to remain studying for the business degree so that he can support his family. But I also believe that Saichi should remain active in his church that he's serving in to continue in his service as the youth leader, as a Sunday school teacher and counseling the boys. I think that he should also be continuing in prayer for what the Lord would have for him in full-time Christian service. And I believe that if the Lord has this in mind for him, then eventually he's going to show that to him. And with everything that was popping up, right as he's feeling called to begin Christian vocation, maybe that even was a sign that's all right, let's slow down right now before we go straight hopping into this. But if the Lord has that for him, then he's obviously going to show that to him, whether that's taking away the whole path to get a business degree or an opportunity popping up for him to be serving in full-time Christian ministry. But another reason I chose this alternative was because I thought of my own story. Even when I came to faith and was called to faith, I didn't feel called to have a Bible degree right away or to be serving or to get a degree that would have me in full-time Christian service. So I chose the organizational leadership degree. And until this last year, that's when I decided that I felt called to be a missionary and decided to add my missions degree. And I didn't choose this alternative just because that's my story too, but I was reminded of my own story when reading this. But I think that if Saichi does continue on the business degree pursuit and he does continue in prayer and ministry in the local church, that the Lord will show him what he's got for him. And I just put down 2 verses that we could think of that I thought would bring up good discussion. And that was Ephesians 6:1, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And then Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Lean not into thine own understanding. On all thy ways acknowledge him, he shall direct thy paths. That's all I got for you guys.
Right, let's talk about it. Feedback. By the way, don't forget to fill out the card saying you read it.
Right on top.
What do you think? Questions? Comments?
I really like the way that you emphasized that if God does want him in full-time service, then God will lead that way. But right now, it honestly didn't sound like that was what God wanted from right then because of all the, because yes, God calls children to honor their parents, and by honoring them or by providing for them, He is honoring them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate your assessment.
What was wrong with not lighting incense? You went to the funeral.
Because I think it was like showing something to do with their beliefs and like the dead, and like I don't really know what they believe, but like sometimes they believe like in their afterlife there's like different things will happen to the dead person, like if you do certain incense burning or different things on earth, and like we don't believe in that, or Christians don't believe in that, or whatever.
Yeah, part of that's the connection with the past generation, those who've gone before, who, yeah. Okay, what else? You like his alternative? Would you do something different?
I think it's good.
I think having disabled children in your family certainly does make kind of a dynamic that you have to like balance. Because in my family, I have a disabled sibling, and so that creates a dynamic that you just have to like work through and deal with. Because I'm certain if his brothers were they were high functioning, or they didn't have any of those issues, then it wouldn't be much of a case study anymore. Like, Saichi would just be able to go into ministry, and his other brothers would just be able to help out with his family. But because there's just like that added stress of like you have four or more people in that family that they're struggling to make ends meet, and Saichi's like the only one that has like an education to like actually do something and like make some money for his family. Puts a lot of pressure on him, especially when Will described like how his mother like worked like in like a pineapple farm to like get him through like school and stuff like that. It's like I bet Saichi would feel very pressured to make that choice, because I bet if he made the other choice and just went off to like missionary school, I feel like he would have that sense of betrayal, like my parents did all that for me.
They were putting preparation into him so that they could, once he was finished, he could put preparation back into them, and then like if he just goes off, it's a sense of betrayal even.
Yeah, and just the fact that they're like, I'm guessing Japanese from all their names. There is that sort of more like head of the household, like close family structure, where the father is kind of like he makes the decisions for the family, and so it's like it's like all these different dynamics that sort of push Saichi to make that choice of I should really just settle and just provide for my family. So it's really hard to just go, well, I just want to be a missionary.
The other one thing that I thought was like, I feel like he could both support his family in like work and also be in the missions field where they live. Like he doesn't necessarily have to leave and go off and be a missionary show results. He can be, if he has a church that he goes to right there that the family lives at, he could work and take care of his family as well as like ministering and sharing the gospel and like right there where he lives. So
Did it say what he specifically wanted to do in ministry? Can't remember.
I don't think so. It just said that he wants to look into full-time Christian vocation.
Just become a pastor,
Yeah.
make like $80K a year. No problem. Come on. This just solves itself. Just don't be a missionary. What's the problem?
And if you like my pastor, he doesn't get paid for pastor.
So you're sitting down with him, you're Pastor Jackson, and you're sitting down with him, and he's trying to figure out the will of God. So how would you counsel him to interpret the will of God and what he is feeling he wants to do? Yeah.
I would say, first of all, in anything when you're thinking about going into missions or even going into a leadership position in a church or anything, prayer should be the first thing. You should be really thinking about it. Is this where God's leading? And also with having people come alongside you to even pray with you and maybe just talk with things through logistic wise too, because sometimes that helps when you're making some of these decisions. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. Others.
I think like also I want to encourage him that you can still be in the ministry and you can still serve the Lord even if ministry isn't your vocation, you know, and that you can still be like an active, you know, member of the body of Christ. You know, it's not like an either or, like I'm choosing my family over like serving Christ. You know, he can still do that in other areas of his life as well.
And we've seen that in many ways. Like we have, I think it was first semester, we had like a bunch of business leaders come in to
Right.
and they explain how they're using their ministry to serve the Lord. There was, I can't remember his name, but he works like around the Bob Jones area or something like that. And he put a huge emphasis on how none of his ministry or his business would be there if it wasn't for God.
Mhm.
He gives all his honor back to God just because of that business.
Do you guys see a distinction between ministry like that and what we call vocational ministry? Do you see a difference? Or do we make an artificial distinction that the Bible doesn't?
I think we make a distinction to kind of like clarify things a little bit in terms of, you know, like if we're talking about missionary or a pastor, like we talk about that as vocational ministry, to, I don't know, like help us clarify things. But yeah, I don't know if the Bible would necessarily make a distinction between ministries like that.
But I think that we see things that are very clear where Paul is like, God has called some to be pastors and some, and those like what we would consider full-time vocational ministries. And I think we see more of like the full-time vocational ministries like presented in the Bible, but that doesn't exclude the people who are serving in their ministries. Like Lydia was a seller of purple, but she still was a ministry to the people around her.
How so?
But maybe
You're right, Lydia, she was still
Yeah.
purple, yeah.
but like, I think I'm getting her mixed up with the lady who passed away and was raised again. Yeah, Tabitha, where
She did sell clothes, yeah.
yeah,
She made stuff and gave to
Yeah.
people at least.
Yeah, not selling.
right. But Lydia was the one who was a seller of purple who was saved or was praying on the riverbanks, right? Okay. And her whole household was saved. But that's all we mentioned of her. I was thinking more of Tabitha, who she made clothes for the people around her, and she was very active in serving those around her. Yeah. I don't know where I was going.
I think it's your point though. Like she wasn't like, I don't know if people would call her like ministry a job
Right.
necessarily, but it was a ministry nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
So do you kind of see ministry with a small m and ministry with a capital M? I mean, is it everybody's doing ministry, everybody in the body of Christ is ministering, but there are some who are called to vocational ministry where they do their full time? Do you see that?
I think you could make an argument for that.
How? I agree with you. How would you do that?
With where we see people like Paul and Peter and the apostles and the who are actively going, they are missionaries and traveling and sharing the gospel, but you still have people like Aquila and Priscilla who are, I'm pretty sure they were tent makers, right? But as they were doing their job tent making, they were also sharing the gospel with people and being active in that other ministry.
Okay,
So, yeah.
good, yeah.
Well, there's a passage where the New Testament issue comes up of like widows just not being taken care of. The apostles are like, hey, our job is not to like wait tables and do that work. Our job is to, surround ourselves with the word of God and like put all of our time into that. And so they actually defer that entire ministry to just 10 godliest guys that they got. And so there is a distinction. There are like roles that people play.
Sure.
And so you could say there's a distinction between the vocational and just the regular ministries in terms of like, because the apostles, they received, I guess, their own sort of Bible college training through the actual mouth of Jesus Christ. And so they're in a kind of a privileged position to hold all that sort of power. And they're like, well, since we have all this, we have these gifts,
right,
we need to use them. But then there's like laymen, there's just guys that are just godly and, they just serve in the church and, that's what they do.
And you can't ignore the distinction in Ephesians 4. Jesus appointed some to be apostles and prophets, which we understand were temporary, the foundation. But then evangelists and pastors and teachers, they're definitely designated and set aside. And some think that evangelists is more like the itinerant, maybe church planter, the missionary idea, whereas the pastors and teachers are the ones that stay, local body, which is legitimate, I think, consideration. So I think there is definitely room to talk about vocational ministry, people called to that kind of work.
Isn't there a passage where they're talking about where pastors and missionaries have the right to ask for a salary from those they are ministering to?
Well, he doesn't actually say that, but in 1 Timothy, he says that a man that does well is worthy of double honor. It doesn't mean, in fact, in that same passage in 1 Timothy 6, he says two things. He says, pastors, you guys be content with what you're making, but you churches, don't you be content with what you're giving them. Always strive to give more. And a healthy church, and we're kind of getting off the subject here, but a healthy church will have both those. The pastor says, God is providing, I'm just trusting him. The church says, we want to do better for you, So where is Saicho or Saichi or Saichi? Where is he in this? Would you perceive of him being led of God into vocational ministry or just serving as a faithful layman, perhaps finding a job where he can help us?
As of right now, I would say he's being called to just serve faithfully as a layman.
And why do you say that?
Because of the ties that he has to his family, because of their needs. And we see passages like the 1 Timothy passage, I think it's 1 Timothy, where it's talking about widows. And when they say, before you take the widows to take care of them in your church, let their children take care of them. And while his father is still alive, and so his mom's not really a widow, his family does have that need. They need someone to take care of them, to help. And so, and also the idea of honoring your parents. So as of right now, Saichi has this responsibility to honor his parents and to help take care of them. If maybe in the future that changes and he doesn't have the same ties, or maybe he has another sibling who can take over taking care of them, then maybe he can go into full-time ministry. But as of right now, I would say he has these responsibilities that mean he should pursue layman ministry.
Okay, good.
Going off that, so the case study only mentions two brothers that he has that are mentally
Are
challenged.
they both? Did it say they were both? I guess I
So
just
one of them definitely is, and one of them showing signs.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
So, and then he still has, let me do my math, four other siblings then. So if he continues on the business route, and then they eventually open up that family-owned store like he's wanting, he can help with that too, be a layman for the ministry. And eventually, like Liz said, maybe one of his other siblings can help run that store too. And once he finishes his business degree, one thing I was thinking of is he doesn't even this could even lead into Christian vocation too. Like he could be using that business degree to start some kind of missions agency or something like that. Use it to start, I don't know, something with Christian, not Christmas. Christian vocation and business combined together, because his business degree doesn't have to just cover one thing he does in his life, which his father wants him to open a store up, and it doesn't have to be just one thing he does with it. Like, even if he does get called to Christian vocation as the Lord, if the Lord does have that for him, this could be something that he uses, or this could be something that the Lord has for him in this path to get there.
Okay, good. How many of you guys know somebody who's in bivocational ministry? We call it that, where they're working a job, but they're pastoring. Okay, at least 3 of you know somebody. I mean, that's not uncommon. In fact, probably in the 2/3 majority world, that's probably the norm. Most people who are pastors in the 2/3 world are probably working a job and then pastoring a flock, just because they don't have we have an unusual situation here. Yeah.
That's a question that just came to mind to me is in third world countries or in places where the standard of living is a lot lower, for the men, for like Christian men that are growing up and they want to go into vocational ministry, but their families are just absurdly in poverty. For them, I wonder how many of them have to kind of give up on that to support their family.
And even if they did give it up, in other words, what kind of a salary are they going to make as pastors?
Yeah.
It doesn't even exist in a lot of cultures, the idea of becoming a fully supported pastor. It's the ideal. That's why Paul says, if they're worthy of double honor, we should try everything possible. But the implication is they're counted worthy of, there's almost this hidden idea that it may not be possible for your church to fully support them with what they deserve. They're not worthy of double honor so they can be rich. They're probably worthy of double honor their being salary so that they can be free to do the work that the Lord's given them to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think of like cultures or like tribes or like even smaller like towns and cities where it's like all based on agriculture. And it's like if you're the eldest son or you're one of the only sons of a family, like that's going to be your job, like is farming, because your dad's not going to be able to do it forever. It's like, is he going to be able to like work 60, 70 plus hours like a week on the farm, like during the planting season, the harvest time, and still be able to be a pastor?
Right.
So
yeah. Well, can we switch gears slightly? Your Ephesians 6:4 passage. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. At what point, let's say that there does come a point when it's impossible for him to obey the Lord and honor his parents. For instance, let's suppose that in order for him to be a faithful pastor, if he's convinced God wants to be a pastor, he's not going to be able to devote the time to his business that's necessary to support a family, his parents and others at the same time. At what point does it become legitimate for him not to obey his parents? Ephesians 6:4.
Wait, say the question again.
Yeah, Ephesians 6:4 says, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. So there may come a point, if his parents say, we want you to be able to support us in our old age and support your two brothers who are not able to work. At what point, if God led him in a direction that made it impossible for him to be able to work and make enough money to support all these people, at what point is he able legitimately to stop obeying his parents in this?
When it will cause him to disobey the Lord.
So how do you interpret that passage then where the command is clearly to obey, children, obey your parents? Is that a blanket statement with, and you did answer the question partially, Rachel. I'm trying to call attention to a little phrase in that verse.
It says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And it says, honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. So maybe it's saying, as a child, you obey your parents, and as you get older, honor them, even if, I don't know.
Well, actually, you're right, but that honoring of parents is more than just little children obeying mommy and daddy. It also refers to the responsibility of children to take care of their aging parents. In our culture, we don't feel that as much because most people, have Social Security or they have a pension, so they retire and they're good to go. No, we're good. You guys go ahead and raise your own families. But in many cultures, that's not. There is no Social Security. There's no pension. Dad can't work anymore, so now what? So the children are expected to help support them. I'm thinking of the little phrase, in the Lord. What does that phrase mean in Ephesians 6:4? Does it mean because God said so, or is there something more to it than that?
I think I've normally just skimmed over that part.
The what?
I think I've normally just skimmed over that part. I don't know what it means.
Is it, I think that it could mean that, obey your parents as long as you're obeying God.
So in the Lord would mean what? You're on the right track. I'm just trying to get you to crystallize that a little bit.
I'm trying to think of a better way to
Okay,
phrase
that's all right.
it, but-
Let's think that through. That's an important contributing
Just
factor.
looking at it as priorities. Your first priority is God, and below that would be your parents. So like when they ask you to do something or they want you to do something, like first has to go through the fact of, is it like morally right? And does it like disobey anything that God has said for us to do? And if not, then yeah, go ahead, obey that and do as your parents tell you. But if your parents ask you to murder someone, that's not going to get to the first like level priority, which is God. So it's all like within, it all has to be within God's like like in his system of morality, of like what is right and what is wrong, rather than what your parents consider right and wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Anybody else want to hop on that? It's a tough one. In our culture, it's also tough. There's this kind of this 18, you turn 18 and there's this cultural thing that says you have a right to be on your own. And a lot of times parents breathe a sigh of relief and say, you're on your own. Get your own insurance, get your own job, buy your own car. You're on your own. There's almost a sense of relief.
You could make an argument using the passage that talks about, therefore a man should leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. So when he gets married, he is no longer bound to his parents. But I think you still have this notion of honoring, where whether you are married or not, you still are called to honor your parents. So I think your question was more along the lines of, if God has called him to full-time ministry that leaves him in a place where he can't provide for his family.
Right.
I would say that God won't call him to a place where he can't rightfully honor his parents. So I had something I was going to say, but then it flew out of my mind. Oh, goodness.
Well, essentially,
If you think of it, come back.
will his family like actually like be able to survive?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of questions here that we can't answer just for lack of more ingredients. That's a legitimate question. In other words, if going into the ministry would cause his parents to to live under a bridge, so to speak, to then thinking about this weekend, what would, that's legitimate, but it's not stated here per se.
I just feel like I'd be shaming my parents if I just kind of went off and did my own thing and just let them suffer on their own.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't believe that you can enter into full-time ministry simply based off of a feeling.
Okay.
You can't say, that might be one aspect.
Mhm.
I feel called to this, but you can't say, I feel called to this, so I'm going to drop all of my other responsibilities, all of the other commands in the Bible,
Okay.
simply to enter into this ministry.
Okay.
And so if Saichi was to go to a place where he were to enter into a ministry where he could no longer rightfully honor his parents,
Mhm.
I don't think that would be.
Okay, good. Another question arises here. What does it mean to honor your parents? In other words, is lighting incense in the Buddhist temple a way for him to honor his parents? Well, culturally and familially speaking, yes. But is he truly honoring his parents from God's vantage point by offering incense in the Buddhist temple? So now you have to deal with the question of what does honor mean here? Is Paul using that statement to say this is, honor as mom and dad would see it, or honor as God sees it? And I think that's part of the secret of the phrase "in the Lord." Obeying and honoring parents needs to be done from how God defines obeying and honoring your parents, not the way the parents perceive it, because their perception of obedience and honor may be completely distorted by Buddhism or whatever. And so I think that's part of the answer to the question, what does the phrase "in the Lord" mean? When he asks the question, okay, how am I going to obey and honor my parents? He has to look at it from God's vantage point. And he may have to do it in a way that to them seems insufficient, like not offering incense to another god. That's idolatry. He can't commit idolatry and be honoring his parents the way that God defines honoring. And so that's part of the challenge for him. I agree. I think we're all kind of saying here, don't just rush him in and say, sorry, mom, bye, mom and dad. Good luck, God bless you. I think we're all kind of saying, let's take this carefully, because he wants to serve in ministry, but how that's going to look. Was Paul a bivocational minister? He was a tent maker. Yeah, he did business along the way to support himself and others. In fact, he even says as much in one of his epistles that by his own hands he supported himself and some who were with him. So he was bivocational. Did Paul? Now he may have also done that even if he had sufficient support from others, just because it was a way of contacting the community. But I don't think that. I think he needed it. I don't think he could have survived without doing tent making. So the concept is definitely in the scriptures. There's nothing in the pastoral epistles that insists that a pastor be fully supported so he doesn't have to do any other kind of work in order to serve as a pastor. Those early pastors that are being established, along Paul's missionary journeys, do you really think that those guys were completely leaving, any other source of income? Probably not. They were probably working jobs and, feeding their families, and at the same time serving as pastors in those churches. So I think that's it's showing his parents that he respects them, he wants to help them, he loves them, but at the same time, he wants to be able to serve God. And this might be one of those situations where he can do both. We don't see that often in these case studies, but this may be one of those cases where he's able to do both.
If he goes down this path too, doesn't that open the door that he could even witness to his family too?
Definitely. However, the one thing you have to be careful of there, Will, is that it would be dangerous to say, I can't fully obey the Lord because I'll lose my witness with somebody. Jesus says the gospel is going to separate father from father from son, mother from daughter. There is a certain sense in which the gospel does divide. And when that division happens, sometimes opportunities for witness are gone. And so that is a consideration. But if push comes to shove and obeying God means I have to make this cut, then you have to leave it in God's hands. Otherwise, I don't think Jesus would have said that. It's a reality that sometimes families are going to be divided.
Do you know any of those verses off the top of your head, that talk about how father will be separated? Or
Luke 14 is one that talks about if you don't hate father and mother, it's that extreme language that Jesus uses, which we understand as a hyperbole. It's Luke, let me dig it up here for you. Luke 14, verse 20 something.
25 through 35.
Yeah, there you go.
It says in my Bible, the cost of the cost of discipleship.
Yeah. And I don't remember the passage where Jesus says, because the gospel, there'll be division between father and son, mother and daughter.
It's
I see that.
It's like towards the beginning of his ministry when Mary and like his other brothers like basically come to get him because people think he's like insane,
Okay.
and then he's just like, "No, I'm not insane."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh,
You can grab a concordance, probably figure out where that is. I'm sorry, I don't have that one off the tip of my tongue.
I just want to write passages.
Hey, well, this is good. And I appreciate your cultural sensitivity. Culture is not God, but culture is a consideration. And I appreciate the fact that you're looking at this from where he's sitting and trying to appreciate what he's up against, that most of us would probably never experience in our family situations. All right, any other final words of wisdom here for us? Everybody good with? Well, then who's on next? Okay, Jay, just pointing at you. Okay.
wife beating."
Oh, wife beating, yes. We did that one in intro to missions brief. Do you remember what number that is off the top?
6,
Let's see if I've got that here.
maybe 6.
Why did you say
Flip your 6 around.
9. Okay. I had the right idea.
And then
just start throwing numbers out?
we have a week from today is campus assessment day, so we won't meet again until the following Thursday, and that's Kenzie on what a woman should be a man. Ooh, transgender issues here, huh? No, it's not. Nothing to do with transgender.
Like, that's not what I read.
Like, that's not what I read.
All right, number 9 for next time. Thanks, everybody. Good job.
In the US.
Dr. Mark.